Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to another episode of Soul Chat. I am your host, Ebony Tutora, and this is a podcast dedicated towards going deeper than the surface. Thank you for joining me for another amazing episode. I'm so excited to share these 3 tips with you today. But before we do that, if you are new to me, my name is Ebony Tutora. I'm a life and spiritual coach dedicated to holistic methods of self-love, soul healing, and sound healing. I have a profound passion for sharing the wisdom that I've acquired from my life's journey to empower others to discover their most authentic self. So, welcome again to this episode. This is a topic that has really continued to be sparked within my heart. And it's a topic that really just essentially helps me to navigate life. And that's why we're here, right? Is to get tools in our toolbox so that we can continue to navigate life. I think I've had this discussion with like some of my really close friends, really just recognizing and paying attention to the places and spaces where we spend our time. So if you have never listened or if you're listening right now, I want you to get your notebook out because this is really important for you to really take some inventory, right? When it becomes January, we have this like anxiousness to figure it all out and have it all together. This is not about that, right? But it is about getting the tools in your toolbox so that you can align with the seasons, right? Because come spring, you should have more clarity, right? Because you've been working on yourself, you've been putting in the effort, you've been listening to this podcast, and you're growing and you're elevating, and you should be experiencing expansion. So these tips that I'm about to give you, um, as I thought about this, I said, this is why older people just become, if you've ever seen that no beep given um, reel on Instagram or TikTok, right? It's an older woman saying, like, I have no more F's to give, right? I have no more F's to give. And I think that we become that way the older we get because we've experienced life enough to understand that there's certain feelings we're no longer comfortable with holding at older ages. You have less, everyone knows this, right? Like maybe you're listening to me right now, you're in your 20s, maybe in your 30s, maybe you're in your 40s, maybe in your 50s, maybe you're in your 60s, right? The older you get, the less energy you have for things, right? It's just a natural way of life is we're going to have less energy for certain things, right? Especially the trauma, the chaos, the drama, right? It's just like we want to step out of that phase. So here are these things. You ready? So there's 3 places you're going to spend in your lifetime, and the goal is to spend your time only in one place, only in one place. And I think for me, I've kind of perfected not being in those other places. And I have quick awareness, quick discernment when I'm finding myself in some other places and I remove myself. So here are these spaces. You ready? The first place a lot of us spend our time in are the no spaces. And remember, life is all energetics, right? It's all about energy. How does it feel to you? Because we can deny what we feel. Why? Because we may have so much trauma and blockages in our body that we're talking ourselves out of the truth. We're talking ourselves out of what we really feel. We're letting other people talk us out of what we feel. You ever been there before? Someone tell you you're crazy, someone tell you you're making a wrong choice, right? No one can tell you that. But these no spaces look like this, right? A no space is essentially a space, right? We're talking about energy here. It's essentially a space where it gives no, right? Like I was sharing on a recent live when like Burlington Coat Factory, that's a store that gives me a no. That's a no feeling. I don't want to be in there. I don't like the vibration. I don't like the way they hang up their clothes. I don't like anything about it. But I've grown to be that type of person where that's a no place for me, right? A no place means it doesn't feel good, right? The job you drag your feet into, they don't pay you enough. You don't like working with your coworkers, right? There's a bunch of drama. It's a no space, but you haven't recognized that yet. So you keep showing up there. And the reason why we're having this discussion is because if we continue to stay in these spaces, how can you be expansive? How can you grow when you're watering your plant with Coca-Cola? How can you grow when you're not refreshing your soil with new spaces and places and people? Right? You just can't. And then sometimes we sit there in our lives, we're like, why am I not seeing change? Why am I not seeing growth? This is exactly why. This is exactly why. After teaching 7 days of clarity for a few years, I began to realize it really began to stick with me. Like, this is an energetic thing. Some conversations you have are no conversations. There are some people that I will not get on the phone with because it's a no conversation. In my body, everything within me, it feels like, ugh, like we're just, why are we even having this conversation? Like, you just want to complain. You just want to not be solution based. That's a no conversation for me. No point in having it. No point in talking to you because it's not going to be expansive specifically for me, right? As a great friend of mine says, this is your movie. We're just in it, which I love because it reminds you that people are just characters in your movie, right? And you get to decide how you're going to navigate with them. It's not them, right? Because then you're losing your power. But a lot of us spend a lot of our time in these no spaces. A no space may be around your family, as sad as it is. A lot of us do have very toxic and challenging families that bring out the worst in us, right? And it's important, especially for those who have exes that they don't get along with, they don't agree with, no matter what you do, what you say, there's no progress, right? Again, a no space. You got to learn to bow out of those spaces. You got to learn to stop honoring the trauma within you to reconnect with these people because that's the only way you're going to reconnect. How am I going to reconnect with a no space? By honoring trauma within me, by downgrading myself. That's the only way, because otherwise I'm rising. I'm not interested. Think about all the things that you may no longer be interested in because you've grown. If you're listening to this podcast, there's no way you have not grown in some way, shape, or form, or else you would not be here. You wouldn't be interested in this conversation, right? So no spaces, it's so important to identify them. And my advice is, I don't give advice a lot. Like, do what you want. First of all, that's the advice. That's the first piece of advice. Do what you want. Second piece of advice is remove yourself from those spaces because they're not going to help you grow. And as a matter of fact, they're hindering your growth. Okay, ready for that second space? The second space are the maybe spaces. I've been in jobs like this where I loved working at the job. I loved the people that I got to serve. I loved my position. I kind of loved what I was getting paid in a way. It was decent pay at that time. But the no factor of it was like the leaders that were above me trying to tell me what to do, leading me in circles. That was like a maybe space because I was like, ugh, like if I could just change this one thing, right? Sometimes we do this in relationships where you can get along with that person, y'all could cook good meals together, you may even pay a few bills together, right? But there's some maybe things about them. You're like, oh, if I could change this about that person, then they would be 100% like a yes, right? The maybe spaces, they're iffy, right? They're kind of like, it's like when somebody's like, hey, you want to hang out? You're like, right. You ain't jumping for joy. You ain't jumping out your chair. You like, you got to think about it, right? You're a little reserved. And we even use maybe language. The maybe language is sure. That maybe language is maybe, right? It's like it gives maybe. You got to pay attention to the things that give you maybe energy. You know what gives maybe energy sometimes? The clothes in our closet, honey. How many outfits do you have or things that you have in your closet? I have clothes like this, right? Where I'm getting to a place where I'm like, girl, you just gotta let it go because you're not gonna wear it. You haven't worn it in probably a year, 6 months to a year. If you haven't worn something in 6 months to a year, you don't like it. It's a maybe. And it's staying in your closet maybe because you wore it once or when you did buy whatever. I don't really know. What I do know is there are spaces, even down to our closet space, that hold the space of maybe, right? It's a maybe. It's like maybe I'll wear that one day. One day never comes because you're not going to wear it because you don't love it, right? And again, this is energy. This is vibration. When we begin to raise our vibration, these vibrations don't feel good, right? That's just really what it comes down to. No doesn't feel good, right? That's like me walking into a club. Ebony walking into a club, honey. Okay, we're not gonna talk about my sister's birthday party where she had her whole birthday party go with her to a strip club. If you could only imagine my face, honey, okay? Guess what kind of place that was, right? Um, it's a one and done, right? It's a one hit wonder. Love you, sis, but it ain't happening again, okay? I'm gonna drive home and catch you later, right? I'm gonna have to break your heart and ask for forgiveness later, right? But those are the places that don't feel good. That's why I said in the beginning, the older we get, what we begin to pay attention to is what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what feels even in your body, the things that you eat, right? What feels good, what doesn't feel good. Why you want to keep doing things that don't feel good? And I believe the older we get, the more we pay for it, right? The more we pay for quote unquote poor choices, right? Why would you want to keep staying in a maybe type relationship? Why would you want to keep staying in a maybe type job? God is calling you to elevate. That's why it's never going to be comfortable. That's why it's never going to give yes, which leads me to the third place where we're going to spend our lives, honey. Okay. My advice for those maybe places is use your discernment, pray for clarity, right? And decide. Decide, is it really worth the effort, the time, your energy to be in those places or spaces? Okay. Third place, you heard me say it a few times already, is yes. Yes. And for those that are still becoming more comfortable with their sexuality, I feel like the yes space is like good sex, right? It's like it's a full body yes. It's like an orgasm, right? It's full body yes. You ready to jump out your seat? If I said, girl, let's go to brunch. That might be a maybe space for you. I don't know. If I said, I'm sending you a package because I've been thinking about you and I just want to send you some gifts, that feels like yes. If you go somewhere, right? Sometimes it might be for me a beautiful, somewhere that has a beautiful setting, whether I paid to be there or not, right? Like there are just sunsets, a sunset for me. That is just yes, right? Right? A rainbow. Like there's just so many beautiful things in life that give us yes, right? And I think the tragedy is we talk ourselves out of the yes. We talk ourselves out of it by saying we're not deserving of it. We haven't earned it. We talk ourselves out of it by thinking it's not possible for us. We talk ourselves out of it because most of our energy is in maybe and no. So you got to balance the scales. You know what I'm saying? If you're living your life in a maybe, and most of your places are maybes and no's, and write them out. Write down your relationships. Write down where you live. Write down all the things that are going to impact your ability to feel like you are in alignment, your ability to feel the yes. Like, what is impacting my ability to feel the yes? Right. And things are, sometimes I think what we forget to realize, or maybe we just don't know yet, is that when you decide, remember it's going to hurt a little bit. You're going to feel a little bit of grief. You're going to be a little sad, right? But the sun is going to come, right? It doesn't rain forever. The sun is going to come, and we need to. That's just part of the experience. Is to experience the grief of loss. You feel lost, even if you decide to go to a new job, right? So just remember that. So as you're navigating life and these emotions come up, know that they're messengers and they're indicators, and they're sharing some information with you, right? Emotions are simply information, right, to your supercomputer to say, hey, you got this program over here that's still running and you've exited out and it's taking up a lot of your memory. You're going to have to close it down, right? Or my MacBook users, you're going to have to quit. You might have to force quit, depending on what's going on with it, right? But we have to stop talking ourselves out of the yes places and spaces, right? Some of y'all are called to be motivating other people, to be inspiring other people, but you keep telling yourself no. You keep telling yourself not yet. You keep telling yourself not ready. And you know why you're doing that? Because you're in the no places. I remember seeing a podcast where the woman said, I don't spend time around the things that make me question myself. And I have less to heal from. You know, when you spend your time around things that make you question yourself, we don't realize that no and maybe spaces make us do this, right? No and maybe spaces are creating room for you to question yourself because you're not trusting your intuition. Your intuition is already pinging you right now, letting you know right now what's a yes, what's a no, what's a maybe. It's already letting you know. And that deeper layer, that soul chat layer is, why are you talking yourself into that space? Right? I always talk about the relationship I spent 11 years in, and I was laughing on the prayer and meditation live, which by the way is still happening. I believe we're on day 12. So definitely come to the prayer and meditation. The links to it are in my Instagram profile. Or you can just shoot me a DM if you can't find it. I was laughing, saying, you know, I knew that that space was a no space almost immediately from the beginning. But because I had so much trauma to work through, I was there for 11 years, y'all. And for those 11 years, I had to work through confidence. I had to work through healing and being misused and abused by men and understanding what I deserved. I knew that someone yelling at me wasn't okay, but it didn't really click, right? And then the person would say things to me like, well, at least I don't beat you. Red flag 101, right? I had to gain confidence, right, in myself. I had to believe and know that I wasn't a failure. I was avoiding failure, feeling like a failure. I was avoiding the holier than thou mentality, thinking, oh my God, I've done all this healing and here I am in this relationship, right? So there was so much shame, so much guilt, so much trauma, so much self defeat and self sabotage that literally held me there, right? And then there's children involved. So then it was like another layer, right? Of considering their feelings, considering, well, let me stay for them, right? We're a family, we got to work this out, right? So there's so many things that keep us in no spaces. Sometimes the jobs, right? What do you hear people say all the time? Well, how are you going to leave your job? Is secure. Who told you that? That's a narrative. That's a belief. The dollar itself is a belief because it's not backed by anything. Isn't that crazy? Right? Go research it. The US dollar is backed by nothing. It's not backed by gold, and it hasn't been backed by gold, I think, since Nixon. Okay. So, anyways, you know, there are things that are keeping you in these no spaces. And the more real you could be with yourself, this is why this is soul chat, because you need to go in your soul space. You need to go in that nitty gritty space, that shadowy looking space that feels dark, them books that got dust on them, and dust them off and say, hey, girl, open them up. Why are you staying here? Hold that mirror up to your face. Why are you staying here? Why have you uh why have you committed to being in no and maybe spaces? What are you so afraid of? Right? What is the worst thing that can happen by letting them go? A little bit of pain, a little bit of grief, but more than anything, nothing. You lose nothing by releasing places that are not for you. You literally lose nothing because what you are losing is pieces of yourself every time you stay in those other places. Every single time. Every time you decide you're going to stay somewhere that is a no and a maybe, you lose a portion of yourself. And then we wonder why. Why do I lack confidence? Why do I lack motivation? Why do I lack clarity? Because you've been choosing to walk in places that are dark. You've been choosing to walk in places that are foggy by choice, right? And again, part of this healing journey is like honor the shame, honor the guilt, but don't live in it. You don't got to live in the shame of your choices. Make better choices and never doubt the power of small choices. And when I say small choices, sometimes they need to be big, small choices. So you can make a big choice, but it's a small step, right? But the big choices, I'm letting it go and I'm letting it go today. This is done. I'm not going to those no spaces no more. And watch how much energy you get back. Watch how much you feel expansive, right? And again, you're going to feel a sense of grief. You cannot avoid it. And once you feel that grief, you're going to wonder, you're going to recognize why you've been avoiding it for so long. None of us really want to feel grief. It's our brain's job to protect us. So, in protecting you, you may even be talking yourself into the places and the spaces that are the no's, which I just went over, right? Because it literally just wants to protect you, and it knows, oh my God, once you do let this, it can already kind of see the future. And you kind of know it too, but it's like you're going to talk yourself into it until it becomes very uncomfortable. And I believe the older that we get, we have to be steadfast in removing ourselves from the maybes and the no's, the maybes and the no's, because you have so much life to live. You have so much goodness flowing through you that you deserve to feel. And this is like me talking to you, me talking to me, because that's something I know. Like I have so much goodness in me that I deserve to feel. And if I keep investing in no conversations with people who don't grow, don't want to grow, don't want to hear what I have to say, why would I do that? Why would I do that to myself? Right? We have to pick and choose. You know, they say pick your battles. And we don't even need to be battling, because if we're battling, we're in maybe and no spaces. Because yes spaces feel like ease. They feel like goodness. They feel like joy. Right. And I think we live in a world that really tries to talk us into that's impossible. You can't be happy all the time. Well, you sure as hell can make some choices to guarantee it to a degree, right? So, summing it up, the three places are the no's, the maybes, and the yeses, right? Sit with yourself, evaluate your life as we continue to grow in 2025, and simply honor where you're at. Honor the things that are coming up, that are showing up in those spaces, right? And know that a lot of times we are the weapon formed against ourselves, causing ourselves not to prosper. Your healing is dependent on you and your choices you're going to make every single day. Nobody else. Because you got to go to bed with you, right? And if you got to go to bed with someone else, you better make sure they fall in that yes place space more than not, right? Because people are going to come with all their things. But we need to make sure they give more yes than maybe and no. Because if they do, they got to go. Do you like that, Robert? Listen, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. I could not wait to share this. This has been information I've been sharing probably within this year. No, last year. It was last year. It was like something that really began to become prevalent in my life and my awareness and recognizing where my energy was flowing, right? And I wanted to flow in the spaces that light me up. I wanted to flow in the spaces that remind me of who I am, because life can feel hard, life can feel heavy, but we don't have to carry every little thing, and recognize what we are carrying and what needs to be put down. So this has been an honor and a pleasure. Before you leave this podcast, make sure you hit the like button below. Okay, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Drop me a comment. Let me know what resonated with you. What are you taking away? What are some of your greatest takeaways, and how you're going to continue to elevate into 2025? Definitely go back and listen to some of the previous episodes if you would like for me to send you my top 5 episodes. Shoot me a DM on Instagram at Queens Recognize Queens, or you can email me at hello@queensrecognizequeens.com, and I'll be more than happy to direct you to some of my favorite episodes as we get to almost 90 episodes already. Have an amazing guest next week joining me, so I'm super excited to continue to build with community. And thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a listener. Definitely share this with someone, because you never know. You never know who needs this. This has been an amazing episode of Soul Chat with your host, Ebony Tutora. I will see y'all next week for another beautiful, amazing, wonderful, all the things episodes. If you're listening on Apple, please leave a review. If you're listening on Spotify, you can also leave a comment. Love y'all so much, and I will see y'all next week.